Salvete discipuli, hodie spectatis lecturam quīndecimam capitis quīndecim. Numerals, genitive of the whole, and ablative with numerals and time. Hodie discemus primum vocabula capitis quīndecim. That'll include the regular vocabulary as well as numbers, cardinal numbers 1 through 21, and ordinal numbers 1st through 12th. Dende grammaticam, genitive of the whole, ablative with numbers, and ablative of time within which. Primum discemus verba vocabulorum capitis quīndecim. In hoc capite sunt quatuor verba: committo, expecto, iacio, timeo. Primum verbum: committo, committere, commissi, committum. Daedalus vitam unius filii sui, nomine Icari, penibus fragilibus et ecerefactis commissit. Quid significat committo? Proximum verbum: expecto, expectare, expectavi, expectatum. Propter magna facta sua, viri in carminibus Homeri, memoriam suorum in animis hominum semper vivere expectabant. Quid significat expecto? Proximum verbum: iacio, iacere, ieci, iactum. Athleta discum iacere se parat. Quid significat iacio? Ultimum verbum: timeo, timere, timui. Nihil nisi timorem ipsum, timere debemus. Roosevelt ille praesidens olium dixit. Quid significat timeo? Nunc discemus nomina vocabulorum capitis quīndecim. In hoc capite sunt duo nomina: memoria, tempestas. Primum nomen: memoria, memoriae. Propter magna facta sua, viri in carminibus Homeri, memoriam suorum in animis hominum semper vivere expectabant. Quid significat memoria? Ultimum nomen: tempestas, tempestatis. Mala tempestas venit. Quid significat tempestas? Nunc discemus alias partes loquendi vocabulorum capitis quīndecim. In hoc capite sunt una praepositio inter et unum adverbium itaque. Primum et ultima praepositio inter plus casum accusativum. Lupus inter oves. Quid significat inter? Ecce multae oves, ecce unus lupus. Unus lupus inter multas oves. Primum et ultimum adverbium itaque. Itaque id incipit, dicit Theodenus Rex. In pellicula Dominus Annulorum. Itaque id incipit. Quid significat itaque? Okay, here comes the count from Sesame Street. Today we're going to learn some numbers. Okay, so first we'll start with the cardinal numbers, 1 through 3. Okay, so these are just the counting numbers, 1, 2, 3, etc. Now, numbers are used to describe quantity, and so grammatically, numbers are adjectives. Okay, so numbers are just adjectives describing quantity. Okay, you're going to get a break with lots of numbers here because, with the exception of 1, 2, 3, and 1,000, all numbers are indeclinable. So it doesn't matter what case the noun that it's describing is in, it'll always just it won't have any separate case endings except for 1, 2, 3, and 1,000. Okay, because these are the most commonly used. Okay, so unus we have already learned. Okay, unus is a IUS adjective, so it declines unus, unius, uni, unum, uno in the masculine, right? It's unus aum, okay, a 2-1-2 IUS adjective. But today we're going to learn how to decline 2 and 3, or duo and tres, okay? And as you see here, duo is somewhat of a 2-1-2 adjective with some weirdness in the dative and ablative. You'll notice that as a number, it is necessarily plural. So there isn't any singular form of this because that is logically impossible. So we have duo, duorum, duobus, duos, duobus for the masculine, duai, duarum, duabus, duas, duabus, okay, for the feminine, and for the neuter, duo, duorum, duobus, duo, duobus. Okay, so that's just the number 2. When you want to describe 2 of anything in any case, right, or gender, you have to use those case endings with the number 2. The same for the number 3, though the advantage of the number 3 is that 3 is more like a third declension adjective, which is also an I stem. So regardless of masculine or feminine that the number 3 is describing, okay, nominative is tres, genitive is trium, see, like an I stem, dative is tribus, accusative is tres, ablative is tribus, okay? Also, it functions in the neuter like a neuter I stem. So 3 neuter things is tria, trium, triubus, tria, tribus, okay? Also, the word for 1,000 is interesting. If you just say 1,000 something, it's actually indeclinable. So it's just mille, 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 right, for any case or gender. However, if you are using the word thousands, so like thousands of penguins or thousands of cars, right, you would actually say milia and then put the word for penguins and cars in the genitive of the whole, which we'll get to. Okay, but it'll also decline the word. So for multiple thousands, you actually decline it as milia, milium, milibus, milia, milibus. Okay, the same case endings as the neuter of 3 here. Okay, so these are the numbers that do decline and agree with gender. Thankfully, all numbers 4 and above, excepting thousands, are indeclinable. And of course, we're not going to make you memorize every single number because that goes to infinity and whatever. But we do have to learn, for your vocab actually, the cardinal numbers up through 21. Okay? And I have here the Arabic numerals along with the Roman numerals, which hopefully you know by now, along with the spelling of the Latin words. And hopefully most of these will look familiar in terms of either their derivatives in Romance languages or in words from geometry or just other English vocabulary, right? So quatuor is 4, quinque is 5, sex is 6, 7 is septem, octo is 8, like octopus, right? Novem, decem, undecim, duodecim, and notice that once you get to 11 and above, you're just adding 1 and 2 to 10, right, for the most part. Tredecim, quatuordecim, quindecim. Notice that this is chapter 15, and I said this is caput quindecim. Sedecim, septemdecim, and then once you get to 18 and 19, it's actually 2 from 20, or 2 down from 20, and 1 down from 20. okay, and then 20 is viginti. And then once you get above 20, you either say, literally 21, viginti unus, or you'll say unus et viginti. And then notice, of course, since you're using unus here, you have to decline it depending on what you're talking about, okay? So these are the numbers you're responsible for in this chapter. Obviously, there are more. There's 30 triginta and 40 quadrinta, quinginta, sexginta, etc. But, we're going to be reasonable here in terms of what you need to know for now. Okay. In addition, for your vocab, you're also responsible for the ordinal numbers 1st through 12th. Okay? And ordinal numbers are pretty easy to deal with because they are just regular 2-on-2 adjectives. Okay? So first is primus, prima, primum, then secundus, secunda, secundum, tertius, quartus, quintus, sextus, septimus, octavus, nonus, decimus, undecimus, duodecimus, etc., etc. You notice that I title all the lectures as lectūra prima, lectūra secunda. I also use ordinal numbers with your quizzes. We're up to the septima probatio vocabularia, etc. So I'm trying to, so hopefully you've already kind of are getting familiar with sort of recognizing these things. So I'm not going to ask you to do any math or anything, just learn the words. Okay. Learning numbers also requires you to learn a few uses of the genitive case as well as the ablative case where numbers can be involved. Okay, and one of these is the genitive of the whole, otherwise known as the partitive genitive. Okay, you've learned the genitive as indicating possession, and it's also commonly translated as of X, of the noun. Well, with the partitive genitive, you could actually do that as well. Okay. And it's used to describe the whole of which something is a part, okay, or a collective of which something is an element. And perhaps some examples will make that clearer. So probably the best example here is partes corporis, parts of the body, right? The partitive genitive, partes, right? But there are some kind of idiomatic ways that Latin uses the partitive genitive that don't quite translate literally into English. So using the word satis, which means enough, you would use that with the partitive genitive to say literally enough of work, but that's really the English equivalent of enough work. Okay, we would say enough work, right, as just an attributive adjective, but Latin would use satis with a partitive genitive, enough of work. Also, a common kind of idiom in Latin to say, what's up or what's new or what news do you have is to say quid novi. Okay, what's new? Literally what of new, or what of a new thing, right? It's a substantive, okay? And then also when you're using thousands, okay, when you're using mille in the plural, you would actually use a partitive genitive to talk about thousands of something. So millia pinguinorum, thousands of penguins, okay? Hopefully that's a nice image to help you remember that, that usage. Okay, well, besides thousands, the multiple of thousands, when you're actually using numbers, you don't use a partitive genitive to describe, numbers out of a group. You actually use the ablative with a or x, okay, meaning out of, literally. So again, it kind of literally translates in a way that makes sense. So here's some examples, okay? So when you're using cardinal numbers, quidam, which means certain, or pauci, meaning few, right? You use actually the ablative with numbers. And you can spot the ablative with numbers because, well, it's used with numbers. And also it uses a or x, right, to mean out of. So septem ex equis, so 7 of the horses, okay? You would not say septem equorum, okay? You do not use a partitive genitive when you have cardinal numbers. So septem ex equis, 7 out of the horses means 7 of the horses, okay? Centum e senatoribus, so 100 of the senators, okay, literally 100 out of the senators. And then you also use it with pauci, meaning a few. Pauci e Romanis, so a few of the Romans, rather than, or a few out of the Romans, okay? This chapter also gives you one more use of the ablative to add to the ablative toolbox. And this is called the ablative of time, sometimes called the ablative of time within which. And like other uses of the ablative, it's pretty easy to spot because there's always a time word involved. And it shows to indicate a point in time or within a span of time that an action occurs. Okay, so here's some examples. Ea nocte bene cenavimus. Okay, we dined well that night. Okay, so on that night, okay, within that night, we dined well. Okay, so we can spot the ablative of time because it has a word indicating a period of time or a point in time. Nox noctis, it means night, that's a time word. Okay, and it's in the ablative, so it's probably an ablative of time. Okay, we've encountered it before in some of our readings. Here's another example. Paucis annis imperium delebunt. They will destroy the empire in a few years. Okay, so here's another kind of way to look at the ablative of time. It's not just a point in time, but can also be a span of time within which, okay, an action occurs. So in a few years or within a few years, they will destroy the empire. They will delete the empire, right? Okay. Again, this is a time word, a timey-wimey word. Okay, annus means a year, right? And it's in the ablative. It's an ablative of time. And then, of course, the word for time itself will, of course, be a time word where you'll often use it in the ablative of time. Eodem tempora exclamabitis, okay? We were all shouting at the same time, right? So that's pretty straightforward, okay? So hopefully these are helpful examples to spot the ablative of time and ablative with numbers to add to the many uses of the ablative, and there's still more to go. So trying to compartmentalize this as much as possible. Okay, I'll see you next time. Well, discipuli.